We have launched.
We have completely launched. We've started the show, and it is Planet Green Trees. We're about to embark 2 hours of medical marijuana and marijuana reform in Michigan.
We're traveling through a dimension both of sound and ideas. We're at a place where the mind can comprehend and devise a wireless transmitter, measure time and light. Astonishing? Perhaps. But you can find it in a place that's known as...
Planet Green Trees.
Attention, ladies and gentlemen. The Planet Green Trees show is underway with your host, attorney Michael Komorn.
Discover 99% of places in the U.S.
All righty.
We have launched.
We have launched, everybody. Welcome to Planet Green Trees. The at-home and quarantine edition, day number 35. For those that are keeping track at home, Deb. And it's officially episode number 459. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, albeit at a distance, calling the show State of Love and Trust. I can hear Steve Miller very loudly scraping and shuffling some stuff around over there, I think. But
me.
So, we got an exciting show. We're live on Facebook, if I understand things, and in the feed,
There's Michael.
there's some questions and texting that can be done. If you have a couple questions for any of our people that are on the show, our guests or our panel here, please don't hesitate to throw some questions out there. And let me say one other thing. Thank everybody that participated this past weekend in the Hash Bash digital version, the official Hash Bash digital version, number 49. It was a great event. A lot of people that participated to make it happen, many of whom are on this call right here. Specifically, Jamie Lowell taking the lead on that, Rick Thompson, Jimmy Powers, all the crazies over in the bunker, Tommy included in his assistant, the hat, name goes unnoticed. But we've got a lot, but we want to thank everybody because it was a great technological feat that was pulled off. And we're glad that everybody could get together for such a wonderful event. Did I miss anything, Jamie, in that regard?
Sounds good.
Okay.
It was got a lot of great stuff captured. It was great, and it was the result of a lot of people doing some hard work for sure.
I understand that some people's requests were Tommy is working overtime to try to cut up some of the.
It's cutting it up.
Cutting it up for different portions and pieces so we can see it in different sections. And we're excited about that. So thank you, Tommy, and all the people that participate, all the sponsors, and especially the Hash Bash organizer group, and of course, John Sinclair and Adam Brook and all the whole crew and everybody. But tonight's show is going to be equally as good, if not better. We have a special guest calling. He was not able to come onto the show on Saturday, although we were all queued up, ready to introduce him. Mr. DJ Short is going to be calling in around 8:45, if I understand things. That's what we've got going later on. But let me start, as we like to do, by going around the room and introducing everybody. It's a little more difficult for me to do this or be aware of it because people aren't immediately in front of me. I could simply just continue to talk the whole night and not recognize it. But I'm going to, while we're doing that right now, I'm going to get some laughs from Rick. I appreciate that, Rick. I played better for you. But let's start by the, over in the corner wearing the pink trucks and the light blue bathrobe, Tommy Two-Tone and his good friend with the hat from the bunker. Okay. We can't hear him, Kevin. All right, good. We got that taken care of. Moving around the room, immediately next to him, we've got Jimmy Powers. Jim Powers was pivotal in making all this happen. He's the only one that really understands anything about technology. He is not in his normal uniform as the COO of most companies and all technological issues, but he's here with us tonight. We're glad to have him. Please welcome Jim Powers. Jim Powers.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here. Guys, thanks for allowing me to be a part of the digital hash bash last week. Thought it went great, especially given the really short time frame. Thank you to everybody who was a part of it and made it happen. And looking forward to a really great show.
Good stuff. Where's Amanda, by the way?
She's not here.
Okay. All right. But anyway, as we normally go around the room here, our mother resident, Deborah, is here. She's got the wrong sweatshirt on today. I'm not quite sure why. But
because the other one's dirty and I don't feel like going in the basement and doing laundry.
That's understandable. She's clearly holding it together in day 35 of quarantine, and we're glad that she's with us today. Maybe gets the vote for best background. Please welcome Debra Young.
No, my hash bash background is better. You didn't even see it, did you? That's a good one.
Damn it, Michael.
Damn it, Michael. You never pay attention to my backgrounds, you know?
I'm going to give you a Dr. Fauci on that one.
Deborah's never one to turn away from a potential conflict.
Right.
Let's jump in and get all over it. I'm kidding.
That's right.
Get your hash bash one up there. I like that one. That one's cool. It's all sun and whatever.
You don't even know what it was. What was it?
He can't even do the redirect.
I know. You know, I think we should switch from Skype over to Zoom because you can do cool backgrounds, and I've got a real cool Prince one that I'd like to debut on PGT.
I'll bet you do.
I do.
I
We're
believe
talking to the wrong person. You're going to discuss that with Tommy and Jim, I think. But
I according to our president a couple of weeks ago, we're going to be back live in the studio next week, right?
No, Sunday, right?
That's
Sunday
right,
is Easter, right?
That's
It's
right.
Easter.
It's a miracle.
So no
It's an
worries.
Easter miracle.
We're going to see Trump arise into heaven on Easter Sunday. We're going to witness it.
I doubt that I'm going to have any divine protection, just to say so. So I'm going to be a little more cautious than that, I believe.
He said so. It's going to be a special day. He said so.
Well.
All right.
It will be a special day. I went out, got our kids all their stuff, and
good. Did you? Good.
You're going to make them paint the living room before they can have their baskets? I'm
thinking so. I'm going to. I have to figure out how to get paint now that it's contraband, but we'll figure it out.
No, you can do it until tomorrow midnight. The order doesn't go into effect till tomorrow midnight. So
super. That's good to know.
You can go hit the Home Depot tonight.
What do you got to do? Paint the baskets?
No.
Yeah, he's painting all the baskets. Steve, do you want one?
No.
It's his living room. He's Anna's doing the taping.
Living room.
That's hardcore. That was a hard no there, by the way. That's like
no.
I probably got 10 Easter baskets already in the basement.
You do? For who?
Oh, my kids over the years.
Oh, empty ones. I thought you had like freshies that you were trying to distribute, amongst the children in the neighborhood, whatever.
Collect them over the years and everything, and you get different kinds and memory.
All right.
See what you did, Michael, by talking about Easter? We're all
very nice. Very nice.
You talking about Easter to Trump ascending into heaven to painting the Easter baskets.
Those are valid topics. You're absolutely right.
Entertainment.
That is good radio.
There we go.
What you think, Michael?
Michael, you still got people to introduce.
Okay, let's get around the room here. We got moving around. We got Steve Miller, who is
yes, sir. I am juiced up for this evening's activities.
For those that are watching on Facebook, I think there may be a thing going on which looks like it's closed captioning. I think I see that. Does everyone see that? Is that really happening?
You can turn that off, I think.
But
I don't think they see it on Facebook, do they? Maybe they do. I
figured Tommy was doing that. Tommy figured something out.
Tommy. What's up, Tommy?
Somebody just do something?
Never mind. Tommy can't hear us. No. I don't even know if it's working. Is anything working right now? All right, so Steve Miller.
Michael's hallucinating.
Steve, how you feeling? You all right? You hanging in there?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, it's I'm doing good. You know?
Okay.
Sit tight in the house, and I got no worries with that.
Uh-oh.
Your food holding up all right? Groceries holding up all right, Steve?
Yeah, got plenty of supplies. And
bunkered down in the Steve Miller bunker.
I went to Costco the other day, and they had toilet paper, you guys, and
wow,
toilet paper and paper towels. So
you bought everything,
how
right?
Happy Aaron was when I got home.
Aaron was gleeful. I swear to God.
Low? Were you getting low, Jim?
We were getting a little bit low, but it's all right. They're limiting people to one package now, which is probably smart given everybody's behavior.
Yeah.
But they're big packages, so they last a while, you know.
You're fine.
Yeah.
You're fine. No problem.
All right. So, Steve, we're glad to know Steve's all hunkered down and ready to go. And Steve, I just want to say, I still can't believe there's multiple things we'll look back on and say, like, what a crazy year 2020 was. But there are certain kids that were seniors, as Dan Warner's child was this year, and is not going to have his last few months of senior year. But Steve's kid had a once-in-a-lifetime circumstance where he was in the Final Four of the state Division I hockey championship, and there was a limit. It's funny because the first issue was there was a limitation on the number of people Steve could bring to the arena because of the concerns of the COVID-19 virus, and he had to make certain calls to favorite family members, calling other ones and saying you're not a favorite family member. And then after making those calls, say, sorry, you're seventh in line, the sixth in line. They canceled the entire thing. So the final four.
After 2 hours of just sweating and feeling just god awful, horrible, it's like, no, they called it all off. I didn't have to go through any of that. So
made you a better man, you know.
Ever since then, I've made myself enjoy all this. Just kind of kick back and relax and
chilling.
Well, it hasn't really been that awful. I mean, it really hasn't. It's been kind of relaxing around here. I'm working on a puzzle, and you know, it's been kind of cool.
Acquainted with daytime TV. You know, Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy in the evening after dinner. It's all good.
We always watch that anyway, you know.
70s and 80s.
Settling into a retirement schedule, you are, Steve. Watch out.
That's right. What do you mean, watch out? That's what I'm going for. It's kind of what I'm trying to accomplish.
Steve's a fit man. He'll get flabby if he goes through the retirement schedule. You want to stay active, man. Keep it pumped.
Fit man.
I know.
All right.
Got to stay on that stuff.
All right. Well, as Michael's still introducing, he hasn't even gotten to the king of the hour yet. So,
by the way, okay, so Steve may be locked up online. If that happens, what do we do? Remember?
No, he's not. Any of that.
Okay, never mind. Okay, it was something else.
I was just stoic for several minutes, Michael, and it looked like I froze up because I was just so stoic.
He was voguing.
And I
doing his Kegel exercises.
That doesn't show the extent of my stoicism.
We have very special, our last two guests.
This is awful. I miss you guys.
Rick Thompson, also known as Big Daddy Rick, also very pivotal in making sure that our event went on without a hitch, has scored some tremendous media connections, and was great as a host, as he always is and always does in his media endeavors. Please welcome Rick Thompson.
Hey, I am properly attired with the Komorn law. Yes, that's right. 1 out of 8, and that one is me.
Brown nosing. All right.
Oh, when you wear it, it's a pride thing, but when I do it, it's brown nosing.
I wear it because it looks good on me. That's why I wear it.
Good job.
Well, I'll tell you what, when I got my Komorn Law hoodie, it was the only one they had available, and it was actually 2 sizes too large, but I knew I wanted it anyway, so I took it. It is the best garment I own. I love sweating this thing. In the wintertime, I throw an extra shirt on underneath it. In the summertime, it's totally cool. You know, It's a really nice thing. I enjoy it. Thank you very much for that. And I rock your name all over my residential area.
There you go.
Good job. Good job. And anytime you want to talk tonight, just go right ahead, jump right in. You got free floor whenever you want to talk. Okay, just keep up the
Wow. I wear that damn sweatshirt every week, and you guys cut my microphone off. Rick puts it on one fucking time.
That's
and
right.
Michael's all like, "Oh, the show is yours, Ricky."
Thank
Wow.
Michael.
Wow.
Low down.
Michael, if you could just
I like the light. The light is pretty good right where I'm at now. Thank you.
child, Michael. One night, make Deborah your favorite child.
Once.
As I give you the following head shake.
All right, we've got to tease the topics.
We got to introduce J-Dog.
Jamie Lowell is here. He's responsible for everything as we get deep into the hour here. It's been a long roll, but Jamie Lowell, thank you for what you do and for being here and putting on that hash bash and dealing with everything. Fishy gosh and
Good
chaos.
job, Jamie. Good job.
Good job, Jamie.
Really good.
All good. Thank you. Glad to be here.
That was brief. Okay.
Doing my part to keep things on schedule.
Yes, he's a team player. All right. So we're going to tease the topics. So we got DJ Short. We'll be calling in soon. Jamie, right? 8:45.
8:45.
8:45.
That's the idea.
Charlotte
Figi, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But the young girl who was the inspiration for the Charlotte's Web and really a lot of the development and understanding and what could be described as some of the implementation into the mindset of many people that cannabis was a medicine, knowing and understanding that this young girl with her very, very severe, I believe she had tremors and
Dravet syndrome.
Dravet syndrome, and tremendously improved her quality of life. Did she pass away from the COVID-19?
Yes.
Is that what happened?
Yes.
Wow. Terrible.
Terrible. Absolutely awful.
Another topic that come around in the past is how cannabis and humans evolved together. This is one of my favorite topics. I'm going to make the argument that at one point humans and the cannabis sativa L plant were one and ultimately divided cells and went our own ways. I'm going to make that case
I
tonight.
love that. That's great. I love that.
CBD, prescription drug, also known as Epidiolex, is no longer a federally controlled substance. So says the DEA. So if you're what?
That's a good one.
So if your doctor was to prescribe it to you, and you were to go out and sell it to somebody else, what would be the consequence? I would ask, rhetorically. Nobody do that, but I'm saying it would seem as if since it's not controlled, it's not. It would not fall within a controlled scheduling and or a penalty associated with the scheduling, because all substances that are controlled have a penalty with them, or not controlled and articulated. But it's no longer a Schedule 5. It's got to be renamed as something else. Is the point? A topic that I'm sure a lot of people are either happy about or not happy about. But Mike Tyson is making millions of dollars in the cannabis business. So says this article that we are going to refer to. And
Wow.
Probably good for Michael Tyson.
Absolutely.
Calm him down a little bit. Yeah.
You haven't heard anything crazy out of him for years.
A lot of celebrities and former sports professionals have turned to cannabis as a way to, perhaps move the needle on getting cannabis legalized for use by professional athletes. And it seems to be working. In the last 12 months, we've seen baseball, football, the national or international athletic commissions all slacking back.
Well, it's so good for I think they're finding helping with the closed head injury stuff.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Darren McCarty has a show on
probably.
Darren McCarty has a show on WJR, and he openly talks about it in that format. That wouldn't have happened just not even very long ago at all.
Right.
Well, remember, there was a while ago that acupuncture, acupressure, things of that nature were considered voodoo science, and they were, laughed right out of the locker room, but now they have acupuncturists that travel with the Detroit Tigers. So we've seen medicine adopt a better mind frame on a lot of stuff lately. I think it's still late to the game for cannabis. I mean, the whole group of us here, we know for a fact there's been legitimate science talking about cannabis's efficacy for a long time, decades.
Yeah.
I don't know if the topic is about Mike Tyson that we would talk about or sports and cannabis, but I like both of those, and maybe we will maybe we'll get to that one today. Who knows? I mean, we're just teasing the topics right now. Topic 5 is the State Commission Michigan Adult Youth Study. I don't remember what that one's about, and of course the recap of the digital hash bash. We got a lot to run with and run off of. Let's talk a little bit about the Mike Tyson making millions, and also
we got to go to a break first.
And I'll tell you, and really quick, that study's an economic impact study, Michigan State University, that you refer to.
All right, not all of my topics selected for tonight got in, I see, but that's okay. I'm glad that more people are participating in the topic selection. I do see that my suggested show title was selected, which was State of Love and Trust. State of Love and Trust. There's a reference in there, someone will get somewhere. Anyways, are we taking a break, Jim? Are you holding up your go to a break sign? And if so, we'll take a quick break. It's episode 459. You're listening to Planet Green Trees. We are live on Facebook. Let me hear you in the comments. Before we go, a couple of shout outs to my good friend Jeff Frazier, who I think is out there listening from Austin, Texas. Alan Peisner should be listening. And if he's not, I'd be angry at him. David Rudoy may be calling in. Alan's allowed to call in. Shiler Engel, we don't know what happened to him, but we wish he was listening. Dewey and Pam, my dear friend Peter O'Toole and Daryl Berry, and probably too many to name. But
Dirty Dan.
Dirty Dan, if he's
Dirty
around.
Dan's listening. I know he is.
All right, good. Dirty Dan, thanks for hanging in there with us and holding up the fort. All right, can we take a break now? Is that good enough?
Got to.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff.
We got to break it.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org.
Whoops! Did state lawmakers accidentally legalize marijuana in Ohio? Some top law enforcement officers say yes. Columbus City Attorney says the decision is based on complications after the state legalized hemp. On July 30th, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine signed Senate Bill 57 into law. It legalizes hemp in Ohio and changes the definition of marijuana to exclude hemp based on the amount of THC. Now we have to be able to distinguish the difference between hemp and marijuana, said Vice President of the Ohio Fraternal Order of Police. That is not possible for a human being to do. That has to be done through crime analysis. The executive director of the Ohio Prosecuting Attorneys Association agrees. This bill de facto legalizes marijuana in Ohio, at least for the time being, said Louis Tobin. We raised this concern with legislators during debate of the bill. It's disappointing those concerns were rejected. Whoops. Anybody want to go to Cedar Point?
You know what time it is. All the way from the legendary Russell Industrial Center in the heart of Detroit City comes Hyped Up Live Sessions. We've created a show to bring the very best talent from Detroit, from around the world, to you sitting on your couch. Yeah, with your host, your boy T-Money Green, you bound to see some hell of a talent, baby, for sure. Couch concerts coming up. You could be the next artist to perform on the Hyped Up Live stage. Yeah, you know me, or if you don't know, check it out. From the Dramatics to George Clinton to Snoop Dogg, my resume speaks for itself. If I said I'm bringing you the very best, I'm bringing you the very best in entertainment. Hyped Up Live Sessions, the way we wish you would experience Detroit music.
An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture is returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, Cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry, so come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.
Komorn Law. Michael Komorn is one of the top attorneys in Michigan that has experience and dedication in criminal defense law. Komorn Law can take your case from arrest all the way from trial, appeals, and even to the Supreme Court. The team at Komorn Law has the compassion and the experience you can look to for help in your time of need. Komorn Law has over 25 years experience in criminal defense. We have accomplished numerous legislative changes through community involvement and lobbying. Our award-winning law firm has a reputation like no other for keeping overreaching government accountable and in check. We have built Komorn Law for people who need lawyers to stand up to the system, fight back and win. Once we become your lawyer, you become a part of our family. Don't settle for less, just ask our clients. Komorn Law, the best damn criminal defense lawyers, period.
Today, the world is gathered to find out who we are. So who are you? Because who you are, do you know, is who we are. So check the boxes appropriately. You will be asked a series of questions. How many? Answer the questions as honestly and as fast as you can. Who are you? Are you up? Are you down? Are you in? Are you out? Are you hard? Are you soft? Are you found? Are you lost? Are you on? Are you off? Are you walk? Are you talk? Are you chill? Are you hot? Are you ready? Are you not? Are you up? Are you down? Are you in? Are you out?
Bill Schuette led the charge against medical marijuana, and even after the will of the voters was decided and the support was enormous, he still continued to fight against the will of the voters, keeping patients from the medicine that they need. So I think it's important that we all speak up on what we think about this initiative. But when the voters have their say, their will must stand.
Here's Michael Komorn with more Planet Green Trees.
Amanda Jocelyn, glad that she has joined us. We weren't quite sure where she was. I'm not sure if we've accepted her excuse. And
I was kind of just building up some suspense for you guys. The digital hash bash that we all put on, it took a great deal of effort. I actually lost a couple of days in there. So I realized it was Thursday, and here we are.
Every good hash bash should cost you a couple of days. If it didn't, it wasn't a good hash bash.
Exactly.
It was very intense.
A few edibles in there and some oil, some hash, all of that. Pepper in with all kinds of love from from not only the co-hosts, but also all of the listeners and the viewers.
Well, and we kept the love flowing for the next couple of days afterwards with various posts, and all of y'all that took screenshots and posted those were great too. Stretching out the hash bash experience beyond just that, that monumental stretch of time, but here it's almost 6 days later, 5 days later, and we're still getting conversation about it.
Yeah, you're right, Rick, and I think that with the more pictures are going to be surfacing, and then hopefully we can have like you. I saw that you'd made a separate collage of some other hash bash events and stuff. Maybe we could do. I'm sure you got some up your sleeve. That's your jam. That's your peanut butter and jam.
But this year we didn't have a gathering, so I have empty bread. I got no screenshots. I have no pictures at all. All we can do is gather up images of each of us individually and then aggregate them together. But you guys got screenshots that'll be interesting.
Yeah, we have a screenshot Skyping. Maybe. Well, I'm just hoping that people have taken their individual pictures of their own. Well, I guess they're not supposed to, are they?
The most important thing is, though, the video will be broken up into smaller segments. So we'll see that absolutely fantastic segment with Q, see that great speech by Chuck Ream, the other great speech, Mike Whitty, of course, Darren McCarty's talking to, Debbie Dingle. Each one of those themselves, as a separate individual video, will command views and conversation for a long time.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
Tommy's things already has. I wrote an article about Tommy's speech there, which was extremely well received. He even acknowledged it on his Instagram show called Hey Tommy Chong. So
awesome. Yeah, I saw that. That was great. I loved that. That was an amazing opportunity to have the involvement in that event.
You can tell that we were like the first to ever get Tommy to do that because he was so much of a noob with the technology.
And that's part of the fun, I think, is like everybody trying to figure it all out.
And you know what the best part of it all was? The best part about it all was that you sandwiched me in Tommy Chong and Miss Dingle.
Well, don't you would prefer to be the middle piece.
Had a lot of looks. Just because of my placement in the order.
I thought
we did that on purpose, Steve.
I thought you liked sandwich action there, Esteban.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's
very unattractive threesome.
I'm saying. That was the best part of the whole deal.
Yeah.
Why did you make me think of that? Why did you make me think of that? But no, it was individually, the individual performances themselves were great. But let's not forget to give credit to the guys who were able to sustain the entire broadcast for 7, 8 freaking hours without crashing the system. On and off, huge undertaking.
Tommy.
Tommy,
you've got you need a little some kind of vacation after that. Some mental breathing.
Sure must have an ass print in it that is just amazing. Right? It's just
how many
right
views,
there, handles business.
Views, Tommy? Tommy, how many views?
Wow.
Pretty damn good.
That's a lot of views.
I'm surprised we haven't gotten any calls for syndication.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
That's next, Steve.
I would love for this to be my job every day.
Not a bad gig. I mean, you just get on here and chit chat. chit chat about some current events and.
Who would run Komorn Law? I mean, that would be.
Shoot, I don't know.
I don't know.
Michael,
we're making so much money doing this that.
Oh, yeah, we're making a fortune
we
doing
may
this.
just make Komorn Law the side gig.
Michael says,
How
Jim,
about
are you
it?
trying to get small
Isn't this
potatoes?
more
Just
fun?
ditch that attorney thing and just do the broadcast deal.
Yeah, there's no more. There's no more people getting raided. And well, yes, there. Hey, I thought we had some kind of just story to talk about with the.
More trustworthy Anderson Cooper, doesn't he? He looks, really
Yeah, he
broadcast
does.
worthy. Yes.
Michael does.
He could pull it off.
Yeah,
he could do it. Yeah, Komorn Law could just be a side gig now. He's just going full-time podcast and TV.
Yeah.
We're there.
Just getting his friends.
Komorn's got talent.
Be a divorce case or two, and the rest of it's just, hanging with the big.
Michael loves family law. Michael,
the wifey, no, he wouldn't. Yeah.
No,
and the
he
wifey
hates
would
that.
like.
He hates
wait,
family law.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to practice family law.
Oh,
That's
God,
nasty
no.
stuff.
Yeah.
Woo.
I think it'd be great, Michael. Just getting his friends out of jail. That's it. We could mess up as much as we want. Any man's got our backside.
Surveillance all the time. We were doing family law.
Oh, I
How come
bet
Michael's
you've
so
got
quiet? Where is
stories.
he? Why is he so quiet?
I'm listening. Come on. What do you mean?
Oh, okay.
He's just trying to decide whether he wants to go full-time podcasting now.
Right.
He's over there, got his spreadsheet with his crunching his numbers. He's trying to determine
The
if
numbers
he can
were
make
right,
it
he would do
come
it.
through.
Do not question your life choices, brother. We love you. Stay where you're at.
I appreciate that. And it's,
I think there's no danger.
Yeah, we don't want to be dangerous right now.
No, I mean no danger of Michael giving up his law practice to.
Oh, okay.
podcast full time.
Okay.
I'm not
I
worried
was
about
like,
him doing
dudes,
that.
we've
No,
been through enough recently.
that's not gonna happen.
So how close are we to getting DJ on? We got to be within a couple minutes, right, James?
Yeah,
We're,
that's going to be a
we're,
really
we're,
cool
we're
little
definitely
segment.
working on it. It's coming.
He's a great guy, DJ.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Rick. What have you? He's been around, gosh, since the '70s as a breeder. What kinds of stuff what goods can you give us about him before he comes on?
DJ Short has built for himself an international reputation on several different levels, which is unique. He's been able to establish a reputation as a cannabis breeder and a geneticist, which is a specialized field, which very few people really know, although a lot of people try to pretend they do. He's also a well-known speaker. He travels to different places to speak not just on cannabis issues, but also on social issues related to cannabis law reform, as well as a community member of high regard. He's actually from Michigan itself.
Is that DJ Short, right?
Yeah. Jamie Lowell, DJ Short not only pioneered the blueberry strain, but did he pioneer additional strains too, I think?
He did. From what I was researching, it was Azure Haze. There's Whitaker Blues. There's quite a list of them, but a few of them caught motion. Like blueberry is an excellent strain.
Well, the other thing is all of the breeders that he's trained over the years and the people he's taught genetics to, strain management, those people are what we sometimes refer to as strain hunters now, as they look for magic phenotypes that express particular strain characteristics. If you want something that smells super pineapple-y or something that really alleviates your joint pain, those are strain hunters. They look for those particular plants to be able to cultivate and breed. And he explained in a common language way to several generations now of cannabis growers exactly how to achieve strain purity. One of the reasons we have such high THC nowadays is because we've been selectively genetically breeding cannabis plants in order to express that particular trait. And DJ Short's the magician when it comes to that. They call him the Willy Wonka of weed. He's just amazing.
That's awesome. So when's he coming on? In a minute? We're working through those things.
Yep.
Well,
We're
hoping that he'd
building
be
up
on
the
by now,
suspense.
but
Building the
it's not.
suspense.
Sometimes that happens. Yeah.
You should check your text messages there, Jamie.
One of the things that we did with the digital hash bash was to feature people who had already been on hash bashes and what we called successful bashers. DJ Short, no matter whether we put him at the beginning, at the middle, at the end of the hash bash, he always gets people's attention when he speaks, and his voice carries. And what he says always has impact, I feel, with the crowd. They are oftentimes I hear people repeating his phrases even afterwards as they're mulling around Monroe Street. So he's an excellent speaker, and I hope we're able to get him on tonight.
Are we having technical difficulties?
I've been posting some galleries on Facebook of previous year's Hash Bash events. A lot of the people that are here are in those photos themselves. Mr. Komorn, a very young-looking Michael Komorn from the 2011 or 2012 album. Jamie, Steve Miller. Jim Powers is going to be in an album coming up. Mr. Powers made one of the greatest Hash Bash moments, in my particular opinion, appearing with his son on stage at Hash Bash to talk about pediatric cannabis use at a time when parents were being penalized and sometimes put in jail for cultivating cannabis in a home where their children lived. It was a ballsy move, and it really helped move the needle as far as public perception goes. And it's one of those things that happened that some of us recognize the significance of, but a lot of other people may not even recall it, may not even know that it was important.
Rick, I also noticed and Jamie, I noticed your picture from '94, circa '94, I do believe. And you've aged well, my friend. You've aged well. It's the cannabis.
Yeah.
It's all that cannabis.
Posted by somebody else.
Yeah. But that's quite all right. I mean, it was still you.
It still was. You are correct. Yep. That remains true.
That was you.
Yep.
Fact can't be changed.
Well, Deb talked about having different backgrounds on Zoom. One of the backgrounds Jamie put on was a picture of Boston George, if you're familiar with him. And we had Boston George in the background and Jamie in the foreground. And it really looked like this is me in 10 years. And that's not such a great representation if you know what Boston George looks like. So.
Yeah.
it's kind of
I've been seeing some stuff about Zoom. And it actually looks kind of cool because it highlights whoever talks. Like, so Rick, if you're speaking, your box will be green, and Michael speaking, his box will be green, so that if whoever.
Well, I can imagine that that's possibly an option on Skype, but I will say this though: oftentimes when you have people that don't respect each other's talking time and they try to talk over each other, that becomes a flashy thing, and that can be irritating on people's eyes and also can be a trigger for certain types of epilepsy. So sometimes that works really well, but sometimes it's a distraction. For example, if you have two people in a conversation, having it flip back and forth to the active speaker, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay. I had never heard of all of these different like platforms, I guess, what we have to communicate with each other until this whole COVID. So I guess in some regards, we're for some of us who would have never used it otherwise, I guess we're learning new techniques and tools as we go too.
Can I jump in?
And you know what? Maybe I might be able to teach my kids something instead of the other way around. What?
Michael.
Well, I was going to say, Rick, you were talking about Jim's historic speech, and
and I'm sorry, I didn't comment on that. That's very kind of you, Rick, and I've just been blessed to be able to walk alongside you guys. Have been in this fight a lot longer than me, so sorry to interrupt, Michael, but
I was trying to turn the attention to you, Jim, because one of the stories that we were teasing is the Charlotte Figi from Colorado. Charlotte's Web is what she became famous for. And as the story about her and her short-lived life reflects and tells a story about a girl from Colorado who helped launch the movement that led to sweeping changes in marijuana laws worldwide, died from complications likely related to the coronavirus. Her family said she was 13 years old. I remember the stories about her. I remember people talking about her and the cannabis that she was using as a medicine from the mouths of people that would have never been in support of medical cannabis. And I say that because she was somewhat of a national figure, certainly helped move the ball forward. And I always, sometimes I can think of, I'm sure we all can think of different times the last 10, 12 years where there was a news story of some kind that had national or local, status, and was a great story and helped move the ball forward in some way. I always see this Charlotte and the strain here associated with her, that being Charlotte's Web, as one of those stories. There's many others. But with that being said, and the recent discussion about Jim Powers, of course, started the chapter in Michigan, or started his own chapter of Michigan Parents for Compassion, and was the one of the go-to parents in that organization when parents had become interested in medical cannabis treatments, therapies for their children. Many of them knew that they could, or they've learned that they could call a person named Jim Powers and get some truth, and he would be honest and forthright with them and give them direction and be a support person if needed, and help develop that and keep other parents in the loop that also served as support staff. Jim, explain to our listeners and expound a little bit, if you would, on maybe some of the experience that you went through with Ryan, as Charlotte did, and what is the status of the organization now, and maybe a general comments about Ryan's health. If you can get all that in 30 seconds or less. Just kidding. But go ahead.
Well, I can talk directly to kind of Charlotte and her mother Paige, and I mean, they, along with a father named Jason Davis and his son Jaden, really started the pediatric medical movement in the United States of America. And Charlotte had a syndrome called Dravet syndrome, which is a syndrome that causes epileptic seizures. And if you've ever dealt with Dravet syndrome, you know it's very severe in most cases, that it's life-threatening. Most children, well, I'm not sure on the percentage, but it's a significant percentage end up passing before they hit, I believe, age 21 because of these horrible seizures that are associated with this syndrome. And CBD specifically has been shown to drastically reduce the seizures in the children and now adults that suffer with this syndrome. And how I was introduced into medical marijuana for kids in Michigan was through a lady named Rebecca Brown. And Rebecca's son, Cooper, has Dravet syndrome. And she had read about Charlotte, and really, I know that it had a significant impact on her decision to move forward with that type of therapy. And had it not been for meeting Rebecca and coming into the network, I may not have been able to treat Ryan the way that I wanted. So Charlotte's passing is really significant, and it tells us a couple of things. The first and foremost is just the pure tragic irony of her death. She passed away from COVID-19. Her passing, I have not read, had anything to do with her underlying Dravet syndrome. In fact, the comment from her parents was that she hasn't been in a hospital in 13 years, and that this was the first time in quite a long time, or something of that nature. And so obviously COVID-19 is here, it's real, and it can cause death in people that obviously have underlying autoimmune conditions, but also children that have no current complications with those conditions. So the other piece is just that her impact on the movement was so great. There's a lot of politics that surrounded a lot of what went on with Charlotte's Web, the strain, but that little girl had such a significant impact on our movement and allowed for the widespread adoption in people that, like you said, Michael, would never have ever even given it a shot. But they saw with their own eyes the effect that it had on this little girl and her disorder and how profound it was. And as a result, it forced them to take a good, honest look at it, because they knew a child's health and wellness was being held in the balance. So that obviously with her passing, it's tragic that we lose that. We're grateful for Charlotte for the life that she lived, but obviously so heartbroken, and our thoughts and prayers are with the family. But going forward, there's still a lot to do. The biggest thing on our minds as parents is what happens during this transition from medical to recreational. And, that's something that has been top of mind for us, how that looks if the medical program should be impacted in a negative way in the future because of people opting to go to recreational. And that's not just from a legal perspective, that's all the way down to the supply chain, because the makeup of the products that are available are changing. And that change could significantly impact people's ability to get certain types of specialized products. And we're already starting to see that manifest itself. But the really good news is that things are much different. I mean, I remember when I really, started to meet you guys and go to hearings with you and really participate in the movement. We were in a much different time. When we went to get Ryan's certification, I called, it must have been 65, 70 doctors to be told every single time, no, not going to do it. No one under 18. We don't even want to talk to you about it. And the complete myriad of emotions you go through when you do that, but then finally coming to two doctors that would recommend him for medical marijuana. And now it just seems to be much more commonplace, and it's more accepted, and things are a lot easier. Medicine's available. And I mean, things are good. There's still a lot of kinks that need to be worked out of the system, and we've got to keep a watchful eye over how those kinks get worked out. But ultimately, I look back on what we've accomplished in the last decade now. It's just absolutely incredible.
What a great story. So some final thoughts on Charlotte. As Jim mentioned, she had Dravet syndrome, rare form of epilepsy that caused her to have violent seizures, and her use of cannabis oil to treat the seizures helped curb them. And this has always been the compelling and profoundness that cannabis had here, and I think it was that evidence, not just anecdotal, but actual evidence that this cannabis oil reduced the seizures of her epilepsy. She had suffered from these seizures since she was 3 years old, and the pharmaceutical treatments were not effective at all. And when she was 5, her mother originally gave her cannabidiol, and or what's known as CBD, and that immediately stopped the seizures. And then as things went on, the strain of cannabis that helped her and that became her named brand called Charlotte's Web. And her mother, Paige, as you mentioned, was the founders of the Charlotte Web product and became advocates for legalizing CBD, and were deeply involved in the Charlotte Web Medical Hemp Act passed by Congress in 2014. And as they wrote on Instagram, your work is done, Charlotte. The world has changed, and you can now rest knowing that you leave the world a better place. And what began as her story became the shared story of hundreds of thousands and the inspiration of many millions more in the journey of their betterment, the team wrote. Charlotte was and will be the heartbeat of our passion. The conviction of the dignity and health of human being is their right. Very, very sad and significant day, I think, with her passing, Jim, and I'm glad you were able to share that and add some significance to it. I don't want to, a lot of people are dying these days, but not any one, less or more significant than the other. But historically, in our cannabis movement, I think that it's fair to say that this is one of those people that, whether she intended to or not, had a tremendous impact on the way the world was viewing cannabis.
Let me just say this, though. Just like the current situation where we have an illness and maybe there are people profiteering off of that, Charlotte's Web, and there's a lot of concern. Jim knows what I'm talking about regarding the Stanley brothers and how that particular strain was not just managed, but how it was used to exclude an entire industry.
Total disaster.
Some states have CBD-only laws because the Stanley brothers said the only medicine in cannabis ever is our medicine, and nothing else meets that definition, and they bought into it. So Charlotte herself, wonderful person. She deserves all the accolades you gave, but it's also a perfect example of how someone's disadvantage can be twisted into another person's corporate advantage, and it seems very unpalatable, Jim, right? It was
horrible. And you guys, I mean, you know what side of that fight I was on, and we fought really hard to make sure that that bullshit didn't occur in Michigan as we were working through some of the laws that we were passing. But you're absolutely right, and unfortunately, what you had there, in my humble opinion, is you had a business interest, and they were lobbying for their business interest. And it's unfortunate because I do believe that's part of Charlotte's story. But I would say that it really doesn't detract, at least certainly not for me. I mean, it was, I think everyone in this movement has seen the video of Charlotte having a seizure and seeing that effect that cannabis oil had on her. And I mean, for me, it was one of the most moving parts of what occurred within our movement. And I think that alone, it caused some challenges, but overall, I think the benefit far outweighed those challenges we had to navigate.
Wouldn't you say that Charlotte Figi was the Rosa Parks of the pediatric cannabis movement?
I think maybe she was. I think it was in a much different way, though. I don't really feel like pediatric patients were necessarily discriminated against in the way that African Americans were, and here's why. I mean, we certainly were discriminated against, but it was we were discriminated against out of fear of repercussion by law enforcement. And I think that the general public very much accepted pediatric cannabis use once they understood what it was about. I think that, minorities in the country have had to go through a lot more than what we've had to, and in a much, over a much longer time span. And that we were able to get through. And I mean, candidly, it was because, as I said before, kids' lives hung in the balance. And that always, in our society, luckily, seems to speed things up, and we get more expeditious things done when it comes to new statute and getting our cause really pushed to the forefront. But to roundabout answer your question, Rick, I mean, I think there was certainly an element of discrimination, but I don't know that I would draw that specific parallel.
I was really just referring to her as a cultural icon, and I was setting aside the whole racial inequity thing. But I guess that's really an inappropriate thing to do when you're talking about Rosa Parks, because her accomplishment was so significant on multiple levels that perhaps there's a better comparison for me to get out there, and I'll work on it. How are we doing on DJ?
I don't know if he's going to necessarily make it in tonight. We'll have to see.
I did. Was Rudoy? I was trying to actually dial in, and I happened to dial. I don't know how I got Rudoy, and I said I'll call you back, and I hung up, and then you guys called me, so he might be in the queue.
We'll call him back.
Unlike a lot of people, DJ still has. Unlike a lot of people, DJ still has a lot of stuff to do, so he probably has got other stuff going on at the moment. He wanted to come on at Hash Bash, but we captured almost every single person who wanted to be there, who was scheduled to be there. There's only a couple exceptions, and he just had other stuff going on, which could be the case now too. So we'll work on that. Maybe tonight, maybe you'll have to schedule again for a future show.
Well, if that's the case, we will once again work on building suspense. I think we're getting pretty good at it.
All right, a couple of shout outs. I see some people joined our show online. We've got our good friend Alan Peisner, who I already have done a shout out to. I see John Schlicker, our good friend up there in the Cannapalooza world. Looking forward to this summer. I see Colleen Keys, of course. and the comedian, and what is she? Teacher Shelley Smith, isn't she our coach? Coach Shelley. Coach Shelley.
Coach Shelley.
Do some jokes and stuff, and my friend Michael McKinney has joined us as well from way up in Traverse City. So we got a lot going on. Ask some questions, call in if you like, and I'm not saying we're going to answer the questions, but go ahead and ask some questions. But another topic maybe we could get to, I thought this was kind of interesting. We just talked a little bit, maybe this is a little bit about what we were talking about, the undercurrent of the dark side of the story of Charlotte's Web, maybe the corporate greed associated with that strain, or the pushing of the CBD as whole plant medicine, which was kind of the battle, I think, the underlying battle. But the other topic that we were teasing a little bit is that Mike Tyson is making millions in the cannabis industry. And I took some notes, Rick, when you were making a comment about there's a lot of other athletes that have gotten into the industry, maybe partly to improve and move along the industry. That's probably some of it, or maybe just to get into the business to make money. I see that that's kind of some of the concept of it. So you have that element here, and as we talk about this, we're moving away from where a lot of us have spent time advocating for patients and the right to use and whatnot, but just looking at it more from a business standpoint and people that are making money in it. So Mike Tyson, as you referenced, I mean, I follow him on, on the internet or whatever. Fascinating guy. I always like people that, become number one and sustain number one, which I think is the harder thing to do. And he was such a force at the time, and I don't know. It's interesting, interesting time in sports and whatnot. But and he, he's described. I've watched him in a number of different interviews. He describes his cannabis use and being a major part of his evolution and his peace of mind that he has right now. And but the question is, has it really gotten that deep into the other sports? I know baseball is no longer penalizing, if I'm not mistaken, drug testing and penalizing for THC in the body. I'm not sure about football yet because, and I've had conversations in and I'll drop his name because he's a really great guy and he's big activist in terms of mental health issues, but former Lions quarterback Eric Hipple, and I had a long discussion about this because he represents a number of people who, I think have been, they didn't see the glory of their after years of NFL of their NFL career and are suffering from physical or mental deficiencies after the fact, to which many were prescribed opioids. A lot of the Darren McCarty story of the physical ailments and all the psychological things that come with the traditional treatments. But he hangs out with a lot of football players. So I got to hear this position that he took. First of all, before I say this, does anyone disagree that football has not changed the rules on drug testing for marijuana in the bloodstream?
They did, actually, just recently.
Meaning what? What's the rule? We got to check that then.
You know what? I will. I'll look it up on my phone while I'm working on the laptop here.
I'm just curious because one of the reasons was, and maybe I know baseball did. Steve or Jamie, any commentary? Jim, sports nuts.
Hey, Jamie Lowell knows personally a whole string of basketball players from former Pistons that are actually in the cannabis industry. Jamie, drop some names of these things.
Well, basketball, I agree. Basketball, 100%. In fact, basketball.
Personally, a whole string of basketball players from former Pistons that are actually in the cannabis industry, Jamie. I'm not sure why I'm replaying, but on March 26th of this year, just a couple weeks ago, NFL players will no longer be suspended for marijuana use. So that's from literally 10 days ago.
All right. Well,
Yeah, Dave just told me it's in the new NFL contract, and so it's set in stone. It's in their contract.
Wow.
But your point is well taken, though. They were sort of lagging. Professional baseball never really cared. Basketball had so many people that were testing positive that they sort of had to back down. In football, one of the things we hear from a lot of football players is that cannabis use is rampant among current players and former players too. So it just makes sense that they would modernize those laws, Michael.
What's the name of the guy who played for the New Orleans? I mean, he was a great college. Ricky Green, or
Ricky
something?
Williams.
Ricky Williams. He his entire career was screwed over because he didn't want to give up the cannabis, right? I mean, there's a whole vice story on him. He became like a doctor, and it's wild to me that here we are, and they're like, yeah, but can't get suspended for it. Every day of his life was affected by his
Williams. He says his last name is Williams.
Yeah, Ricky
Dave's
Williams.
yelling from the bedroom. Ricky Williams.
Right.
From the Miami Dolphins.
Miami Dolphins. He played for New Orleans, I think, for a little while. He was a great Anyways, what I was going to say, back to the Eric Hipple story, his theory at the time was that the NFL won't or be slow to, unlike the other sports, to legalize or not punish players for use of cannabis because there is so much money that is spent on Sundays and Mondays gambling. And the way that football works is that the players are so, positioned, and they can anticipate, and the spreads are relatively close. And in order for it to get that kind of action, you have to have confidence in the teams, in the spreads, and in the way they're able to kind of, measure the gamesmanship and the scores. And the idea was that if you had cannabis involved in this, it was too much of a variable that they couldn't control. You know what I mean? Like they know, like if the whole roster's healthy, that team's going to go out and, put out 35, points or something like that, and hold them to 14 points. You know what I mean? Like there's a science. There's more of a science in the production of the players. Whereas when you that was the theory. So if you let them use cannabis.
Well, Mike,
yes, go ahead, Rick.
Certainly, the way that these advancements have come about might support what you just said. These were raised by the Players Association and insisted upon changes by the Players Association. The kind of influence you're talking about would have been exerted on the owners, so you would have seen them be more resistant to changes in the cannabis policy because of that. So perhaps what you're saying is rooted in what we've actually seen as far as that evolution went.
And I mean, there's a couple other players that told stories that when they were in, different states playing away games, they'll have investigators follow them to see who they're interacting with because they don't want there to be any possibility of influence of paying them off for the games because there's so much money that's exchanged. That was always the theory. I'd never seen professional sports through those eyes. That's why I always thought, there's always a reason. There's always a different reason why, or some non-logic that's used a lot of times when marijuana policies are being implemented or whatnot. But that was my takeaway. I see we're joined by the Rasta Rabbi, the lower right-hand corner. I can see all of his nostrils, not just half of them. Alan Peisner is here. Good, Alan. Good morning.
Good afternoon, Michael, or good evening. And I can offer an appellate update on a recent case from the Michigan Supreme Court if anybody's interested.
By all means.
I thought they were shut down.
No, we just got a case out of them on Monday, and it was called Cannabis.
Were the justices 6 feet apart when they ruled?
Well, it was argued November 4th, 2019. But
they
the
must
decision
have did it over Zoom. Nice.
Yeah, but the decision came out April 6th, 2020, or last Monday. So it's time for the appellate updates without any further ado. Bum, 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 bum. It's time for the appellate update. This appellate update is sponsored by Komorn Law. KomornLaw.com for all your marijuana needs, whether they be business or criminal defense. Okay, so the case we're going to talk about is Canvas versus Glover from the United States Supreme Court. It's case number 18-556. And what happened in this case was a police officer pulled over a 1995 truck. And the only reason he pulled him over at the time was that he knew that this truck had an owner whose license was revoked. So he identified that this was the truck that belonged to the owner and that the owner had a revoked license. And based on those two facts alone, they stopped the driver. And so originally what happened in Kansas was the first court that saw it dismissed. Their Court of Appeals reinstated the case saying the stop was reasonable. The Kansas Supreme Court again dismissed, said this is a Fourth Amendment violation. He didn't have any facts supporting his stop. And the United States Supreme Court reversed the Kansas Supreme Court in an 8-1 decision saying that with just that fact alone, that he knew the license was revoked, and I emphasize the word revoked, not suspended, that fact alone, and the officer didn't have any facts to negate that the owner was driving. In other words, it sort of puts the onus on the defendant to show that he didn't have probable cause, where really the burden's always been on the government to justify the stop. So this case is kind of a backwards case to begin with. But the one important message to get from this case for everybody listening, and I hope I can bring Steve Miller in on this point, is that it doesn't take much for a police officer to know that a car in the vicinity of his vehicle is being driven either with a suspended license plate or that the owner of the vehicle's license is suspended or revoked, and that police cars have automatic devices or scanners that look at the license plates of vehicles within their visible range. And if a license plate comes back that further investigation is needed because either the license plate suspended, the tag's expired, or the owner's license is suspended, it sets off an alarm for the police officer. Police officer doesn't even have to be in the car. The police officer can be on the sidewalk talking to a pedestrian and hear a beep, and then know that a vehicle has just gone by that he needs to stop. And that's his probable cause, is relying on this database, which is what this Kansas City, it's Kansas deputy sheriff did. He had no personal information that there was a crime being committed, and but he did the traffic stop. And the United States Supreme Court said this is reasonable.
What was the traffic stop reason? What was the reason for the traffic stop?
Just that he knew that the owner of the vehicle had a revoked license, driver's license.
Did he see him visually driving?
He saw him driving, but he did not observe any infractions of the motor vehicle code. There was no bad driving.
He just saw him, and in small town Kentucky or wherever they were, Kansas, he said, I know him from another incident, and I recall that he is...
No, that's not what happened. What happened, Michael, is the equivalent to police from my day. Police officer drives up on the car, sees the plate, runs the plate in my computer. Driver, registered owner of the vehicle, comes back with a suspended license and a warrant out of Romulus. Now I'm going to stop him because now it's a good arrest. So Alan's saying that the technology has gotten a little bit better than that the officers now get some sort of alert or something just when a car that drives by that's registered to a suspended driver with warrants or something. Is that right, Alan?
At least in St. Clair Shores, I know they have that feature. I don't know what they had out in Canton when you were working there.
Alan,
you know what I had a question about? I was really, I have had this on my mind since Michael was talking about the sports situation. And one of the things he brought up that I thought was extremely important to revisit is the spread. Now, he was referring to the spread in being point spread, right?
Right.
But I'm talking about what's everybody's spread situation been looking like since we haven't been able to meet up?
Well, tonight, I don't even want to say what I had.
Yeah, come on. I had pizza, all right? I'm
Okay,
guilty.
I had a little. It's rice with chia something or other. Mixed with some chicken.
Barbecue ribs here, baby. I eat like a king.
Wowzers. Wow, barbecuing, that's, oh man, I can't wait for, one of the best things is barbecue, like vegetables, like grilled veggies on the barbecue, and those little green onions. They call them cebolitas. I'm not pronouncing it properly, but they're just little green onions. And you put them on your barbecue grill just for a little bit, salt and pepper those suckers. Oh my gosh, it is so delicious. So delicious.
Sounds wonderful. Sounds
so, Michael, you just started, as soon as you started talking spread, that's where my head was. All right. And it hadn't left since.
Because you have dietary restrictions, Michael, right? For your holiday coming up?
Spread head.
I am a spread head. That's me.
You don't get much more restricted than Michael.
Wait, let's not say that out loud.
What we're really all saying is that we missed the gathering because Planet Green Trees
has the best podcast spread this side of the Atlantic.
It's true.
Yeah, I would venture. Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt, without a question.
Yeah.
I will say this. I see that I want to continue to talk about what we've been eating and how everyone's keeping their own health. Where clearly I was going to try to get us back to the Fourth Amendment for a second while we had our resident Fourth Amendment appellate update guru, Alan, here. But instead of doing that, let me just do this instead. I want to do a couple quick shout outs to some people that I see join the conversation. Our good friend Adam L. Brook, who enjoyed the Rasta Rabbi in this particular instance. And also, I see a couple Chargers, South Chargers out there. My good friend Tom Copps, chiropractor, Woodward Avenue and 13 Mile Road. Go visit him there. And Jamie Lowell, our other South Lathan friend, Heidi Sobel, joined in from Planet Green Trees tonight. So we all want to give a shout out to Heidi. And
Hey, Heidi.
let me say this, and I think that's everybody for right now. All right, so we're done with the Fourth Amendment, right? Is that right? Or we're done with it?
I mean, Michigan's done with the Fourth Amendment.
Seems that way, Jim, right? Wouldn't you agree?
So is the Supreme Court if you read this decision. I mean, you could have your license suspended for financial reasons. Doesn't mean you're a bad driver. But and that's what Judge Sotomayor said under dissent. That,
Did we? I thought was somebody going to be checking on David. I don't know if he's still in the green room or whatnot.
Rudoy? Yeah.
Rudoy?
We tried him.
How about DJ? We're still working on DJ, or it's not going to be a DJ's not to go?
DJ may not.
DJ officially bowed out for tonight. He sent his apologies and said that he would like to reschedule, and I said I'll be in touch. So he rescheduled.
Alan, just for me and my Fourth Amendment listeners, the officer saw the person and recognized the person.
Oh, okay.
No.
He did not have a beep go off, or did he have a beep go off?
Beep.
Hello? No, they didn't have that at all.
David.
They didn't even hold a hearing on this. He was just on a routine patrol. He ran the plate, and he saw that the truck was registered to this person, Charles Glover, and he assumed that was the driver of the vehicle. He didn't know that. He stopped the truck because the vehicle was owned by somebody with a revoked plate. There is a 7-page stipulation that they entered into instead of holding an evidentiary hearing, and it's on the second page of the opinion.
Very good. I get it. So there was a inquiry that was made. The question is whether or not that investigative tool justified as a basis of a stop.
Right.
There's not really a traffic offense that's taking place. It's more of a hunch that the person behind the wheel is the person behind the wheel driving the vehicle is the unlicensed owner of the vehicle. That is the assumption that
He's
we
not
debate
going off
here.
for the rest of the night.
Right. The assumption was that somebody's driving that vehicle with a revoked license because the owner of that vehicle has a revoked license, and that's why he did the stop.
All right. David Redoy is here. You may not have heard the commentary about what the Fourth Amendment implications were of this Kansas case from the Michigan U.S. Supreme Court and the bad holding there, David. But Alan,
What
oh,
case? Kansas versus Glover.
You're late. You're late to the game.
Okay.
I can't.
I can summarize it for him real quick, David. Again, versus Glover, the police officer ran a license plate and saw the vehicle had a owner whose license was revoked. So he stopped the vehicle, and he didn't know if the owner was driving or not, but he stopped it just because the vehicle had an owner whose driver's license was revoked. And the Supreme Court in 8-1 decision said that's a reasonable stop.
Was there facts of, like, it looked like the owner?
No. What they said was where there are no facts negating that the owner might be driving. They said it might be a different case if the owner was an old elderly man and a young woman was driving the vehicle. Then this case might turn out different, but we don't have that here.
Okay, so it left the door open a little.
Yes.
I don't know. I'll play the devil's advocate on this one and say that to a normal person that probably seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I was going to say the idea, the concept that we're debating here is the registered owner of the vehicle likely to be the person driving the vehicle? Is that a fair hunch? Is probably the argument that they thought about. Like, who else would be driving the vehicle? Right? I mean, most people maybe their daughter, like a son or a.
A lot of people could be driving the vehicle, though.
True.
A lot of people. A lot of people.
So, like,
I think it's
the owner of a vehicle very oftentimes is not the person driving it, so it's like, it's less likely that it's the owner than I would say. And I think they need articulable facts. They need to at least be able to say, owner's a 40-year-old male. I saw his ID. It looked like the same guy.
The only facts that they had were that they ran his plate and the registered owner of the vehicle's license was suspended. That's it. That's what we're dealing with. Revoked. Now the question is this: there's implied consent, implied rules of when one is given a license, which says if you're pulled over by the police, you will present for them your valid driver's license, your proof of insurance, and registration of the vehicle. So that would be something that would or should be expected of every vehicle that's being driven on the road. So the idea that the person driving the vehicle, when checked, is missing the possible thing that would be necessary at the time of the traffic stop is the only thing that they might have going forward. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. I'm trying to embrace the idea that, because
so like if you have no license, your license is revoked, but you want to own a vehicle for somebody else to drive you in, that would mean that you're subject to being stopped every single time you drive. You're not allowed to own a vehicle and have somebody drive you without being subject to being stopped by the police anytime they want to investigate whether you're driving.
If you don't have a license, you're not allowed to register a vehicle in the state of Michigan. So I'd say yes.
I think you can register a vehicle. Why can't you own a vehicle?
I'm pretty sure you can't register a vehicle in the state of Michigan unless you have a driver's license.
Why? You can't just own a vehicle for like a classic car? You can't own it?
I'm pretty sure.
Own a vehicle to have people drive you?
I'm pretty sure you can own a vehicle. You just can't register a vehicle.
And you can't get plates?
Right, exactly.
I'm not sure on that. Mike?
I believe you can.
I think you can too.
Okay.
If you own that vehicle, you can get plates. You don't have to be a licensed driver to get plates for that vehicle.
Does anybody need some potatoes for their pot roast?
Look at that guy.
Mike, did you do a digital Pesach?
We did a Zoom yesterday. We did a Zoom yesterday, and it was very distracted with my sister in New York and her children. And not really one tonight. We usually don't do a second night. And if we do a first night, it's usually tortured. And I'm always asking too many. Go ahead.
Did you hide the afikoman?
The afikoman was hidden before I got to the table last night, and it was discovered by my oldest daughter before it was time. Before it was time for the search to begin, actually, which happened quite a bit. Like, there were no rules being followed. And I got accused of that as a child. Actually, I had I was at a Seder and found the afikoman like before the Seder started. Like I was wrestling with my cousin, like pushed me, and I like fell into some. Oh, there's the afikoman. They're like, what? You're cheating. I got like a cheating call at the Seder. Yeah, but I got the. That's right. Some families didn't talk for a couple decades. But it's
That's
okay.
a hilarious story.
What does an afikoman go for these days? What do you get for finding it?
Bupkis on a roll. Bupkis. Not much.
That's it.
I want to go back.
$20? I was thinking.
David, what about you? David, what about you? What were you doing? Who else?
Huh?
What did you do? Did you do a Zoom Seder?
I got
Call me out on my.
Oh, we got Benihana. I got Benihanas.
Oh, good.
And I thought about the Jews having to, leave before the bread could rise.
Right.
I was thinking about that story, and I was like, why does God murder every firstborn child? And he could have just killed that one Pharaoh. It never made sense to me much, like there's one Pharaoh that won't let the Jews leave. And he's like, you know what I'll do? I'll kill all the unborn children or all the firstborn children, like babies and stuff, instead of that one Pharaoh. Never made much sense to me, that story.
But that one biblical story gives us the story of the burning bush, which is the oldest recorded evidence of the cannabis plant. I mean, what other plant could burn without actually being consumed? But there were flames there, but the plant was not being consumed by the flames. And what other plant could give somebody those crazy ideas to
I heard it was a DMT plant.
Yeah, there's a couple of them that might give you a few ideas.
There's some plants that are rich in DMT that are local to that area.
No, it was cannabis. It had to have been.
I think Zeus used cannabis too.
Yeah.
David, what do you think about former Judge Jody Switolski running for Macomb County prosecutor?
I don't feel good about it, to be honest. I don't feel good about it. I don't want her to be prosecutor, to be honest. Her temperament as a judge was, pretty tough, I would say. She was a very tough judge. And I think she'd be a tough prosecutor to deal with. Although she's been a defense attorney for a few years recently. So maybe her attitudes have changed. I don't know. But I think she'll be a really tough prosecutor that will not, I don't know. Maybe she'll change. But back then, I don't feel like her focus was rehabilitation so much. Right. So, but that's what she's been pushing for a while. And if that's her focus and not ruining people's lives, then I'll be cool with it. But as a judge, what do you think, Mike? I think she was rough as a judge.
Well, who are the other people that are put their name in there? You got Peter Lucido and Mary.
Crazy Mary.
Oh, yeah. Mary Shanowski. Yeah.
Shanowski. She's, it's a very political position, obviously, and Macomb is one of those very unique counties, much different than Wayne County and much different than Oakland County in its own diverse and unique way. And I don't know. I thought Crazy Mary's a little crazy. I understood her next thing. She was trying to get a show, TV show, to be like a crazy judge TV show.
Judge Mary.
Yeah, but as much as first of all those people that we just mentioned, by virtue of just the simple facts, I would be drawn to Pete Lucido. Number one, he's a criminal defense lawyer by trade. He was, I may not agree with, I may not agree with his politics per se, but he is also the one legislator who I would say was a friend to criminal justice reform over the years.
What are his politics you wouldn't agree with?
I mean,
it's a good question, David.
That you do not agree with, or that you do?
Komorn. He said the other day it's in politics.
I think that he is I think he's a big supporter of Donald Trump, and says it like that. I could be wrong, which is what I would not be as that outspoken in that regard for that particular person. I'd be a little bit more neutral about any particular candidates or current politicians.
Neutral? Are you just trying to stay neutral?
I'm saying
Michael's real
there's
neutral.
That's the best policy.
There's a picture of, wait, Jim, you know what I'm talking about. There's a picture of one of our Supreme Court justices and that particular senator we're talking about right now from Macomb County at a rally in Macomb County where they both are in like the front row, and they are, got, it looks like some crazy, Amanda's rocking it like I meant. But do you know what I'm talking about? We should find that picture. Anybody? Alan, do you know what I'm talking about?
I mean, I don't think we need to. I mean, he's 100% on the Trump train.
He was like, oh my gosh, so super red in the face too. He was very passionate about it.
Man. Yep. He is a passionate guy. There's no doubt about it.
But here's my thing. I would just say, I don't think who you although for me it's crazy. I think it's crazy that to still like Trump as president, me personally, but I don't think that matters for how good of a prosecutor they are.
I know.
I disagree with him really strongly about that, but the prosecutor positions about how you're gonna deal with criminal justice, which I don't think supporting Trump says anything about how you feel about criminal justice, really.
Yeah. And he leans libertarian, which is really good for.
I can make the case, David, to disagree with you about that and Trump and blah, 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 but I'm not going to. Because really at the end of the day, I think you are agreeing with what I originally said, which is that he is as an individual, putting aside his party and his political affiliations, I like the fact that he's a criminal defense lawyer by trade and that he has been leading the charge in criminal justice reform, and he cares and he knows and he did that as a legislature when no one else is doing it. So I got to figure that people know that about him. They know what they're getting about him. I'm not saying he's going to be soft on crime. The politics of being a county prosecutor, unfortunately, are giving the image and presenting one as being tough on crime. Nobody's saying don't be tough on crime, but be just. If you're going to be tough on crime, is what I think. Be just and seek justice. Don't just seek winning and political fortune in the place of their duty as a prosecutor, which is to seek justice and only issue warrants and complaints, indictments when there's good reason to believe that they'll be able to get a conviction at trial, right? Nothing short of that.
One good thing about
hopefully he'll be a good prosecutor. He's probably who I'm leaning for in this current list of prosecutors we're dealing with. But that's,
I think he'd be fair. I mean, I do believe that he wouldn't put up with any shit, and I also believe that Pete Lucido is he's a very passionate guy. He's also very emotional.
That's what I was concerned. I was thinking he is so extremely emotional. If he's up there and I don't know if it's going to be very good for his blood pressure. That would be my concern for him. Because he just seems to get very upset.
He's such a high energy guy. I feel like whatever he does, he's always going to be high energy. I don't think being a prosecutor would necessarily be bad for him. I know in Macomb County, we all know Pete, and we all are accustomed. We know how he is. We know he's a passionate guy, and we know to expect him to show that emotion. He kind of wears his heart on his sleeve. But we also know that, I mean, like Michael said, from a criminal justice reform perspective, I mean, he is very fair, and he keeps an open mind, and I think that's the exact type of person that we need in that slot. I think some of the things that are happening in Lansing need to be sorted out before election time, because obviously there's things being said about him that would need to be contemplated if you were electing a man to that sort of position. But I don't have all the facts in those situations.
You're referring to the statement, the locker room talk thing or something, right?
Well,
okay.
There's some people saying it was more than that. I think that we owe it to the citizens of Macomb County to expeditiously investigate those allegations and either determine if there's a foundation to them or not. Because at the end of the day, if they are true, and there's certainly people you would not have any reason not to believe saying these things. But if they are true, then people need to know about it before they go into the voting booths.
Jim, let me ask you something. First of all, talking about Pete Lucido and things that were said about him, and I'm imagining that they would or could be characterized as things that the Me Too movement would take offense to. With that being said, I'm aware of one particular incident where a reporter for a Lansing newspaper, young woman, showed up during a session, and on the same day, at around the same time, Pete Lucido was entertaining his high school alma mater, which I think was, if not Catholic Central, one of the other Catholic high schools, De La Salle maybe. But nevertheless, they were there, and it was his day to show off with them. I know of that one particular incident. Are you referring to others beyond that one, or what? Just we're calling them allegations. I don't want them to be.
That's the only one I've ever heard.
No, there's a House representative that has an accusation against him also, that during the introduction time when the senators take people around, that he was inappropriate with her as well, I believe, Jim.
That was my friend.
Yeah, I mean, there is, and again, I think if they exist, we need to know about them. But otherwise, I mean, frankly, every time that I've dealt with Senator Lucido, it's been a positive interaction. I can say that, but that's not to say that any of these allegations should be discredited. Much the opposite. I think that if they exist, we need to either find that they have a foundation or somehow, find evidence against it. But we've got.
Hey, like a little bit of breaking news on that Pete Lucido guy. Kayla says that's her friend, and that shit's true. Kayla's sitting right next to me.
Which shit? What part of it?
Senator Mallory McMarrow.
He's a creeper.
He put his hand on her backside and made a derogatory comment about
That's what it was.
her being
okay.
And
all right. He's a creeper.
Kayla says she has reason to believe that's a good woman who's telling the truth.
Okay.
What about Lucido's position on forfeiture?
Well, you
can't
gotta keep
grab
those things
people's
separate.
backsides.
You
Can't
can't.
grab the backside,
You
no
gotta
matter
keep
what your
it
position.
separate.
No, you can't. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that those sorts of allegations have to be investigated. And
yeah, they have to be investigated. But the thing is that Alan, I'm not sure what you were referring to in regards to forfeiture, other than what his bill was that he presented. But touching someone's backside is.
No, I'm not trying to equate, or I was just trying to take another aspect of his political career, that he may have the same problems that Trump had in his earlier years.
Yeah, I agree. He's going to have
inappropriate behavior, and that might prevent him from being elected. But it doesn't hurt to look at his other political positions.
You know what's unfortunate right now? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you know what's unfortunate right now is that it's more normal to see that people have had that allegation than not. But that's where
the
we're
problem.
living right now. That's where we're at.
And
So
I mean,
it's like you wonder why, if they don't ever have anything pop up on them, it's like, why? Really?
Yeah, well.
Because everybody else has had something.
All right.
Yeah.
All
And
right,
I
all
don't
right.
know. In Macomb County, I can tell you we're sick and tired of, politicians that don't have a moral compass. And not to say Pete Lucido's one way or the other. I expect he will be investigated, hopefully, and if whatever, that'll come. His day will come. But I want my kids to be able to look up to the politicians in this county. And right now, all they see is politicians being walked out in handcuffs, and that is problematic. And we need someone in that post that it has a moral compass and is fair.
It's crazy. Does this happen in, like, Mike? Have you seen a prosecutor, an active prosecutor, getting accused of CCE? Like, has that happened in like your? It's never, like, in my legal career, I've never known of anything like that.
That seems to be a big one.
Like,
it's a pretty big deal. We talked about it for a long time. It's a big deal, and I want to come back to that 1 second. I just want to say this, David. The issue you were talking about is different than the one, Jim. That's a separate incident, right? The one that David's referring to, where a woman was touched. The allegation she was touched.
There are more than one allegations against Pete Lucido.
All right. Fine.
Hey, Jim, it sounds like we're going to have to get you on that fact check. We did the earlier Rona fact check. We're going to have to do another.
We'll
David,
fact check the heck out of that.
I just read the Facebook story that
No, it's heard on Crane's Detroit.
a report on Crane's Detroit, apparently, where it's probably inappropriate stuff that he did, but it's not like crazy.
They touched her.
He grabbed her by her lower back, upper butt area, and was holding his hand there while having a conversation and saying something at maybe another time to her about at the same time that she won the election because she's pretty. It was pretty creepy. Pretty creepy.
But this is a symptom of a system that self-polices, right? I mean, we have police agencies that know officers are doing bad things, but they cover it up, the blue wall or whatever. Same thing with politicians. They do bad things. The Senate committee or the Republicans, they cover it up, and then all of a sudden, these no penalty, and then he feels empowered to do it again because he escaped consequence. And the people are lesser for having those acts hidden from our view. So.
Oh, anyway,
Wow.
So getting back to, I just for the sake of argument, I guess, and I'm not trying to defend the behavior, the allegations, but we are living in a really, in the touching. I'm not defending. When he got accused of what he said to this woman who was a reporter. I felt like it was a little hypersensitive. It may have been totally inappropriate, but I don't know who he is. I don't know, I don't know him like that. I knew him only as someone who, I like the causes that he championed, and he's a criminal defense lawyer. Doesn't mean he's not a scumbag. Doesn't mean he isn't a misogynist. Who knows? But I'm saying, when I read objectively the story of how he interacted with this reporter and what I thought, what he was defending to say, he made a joke of some kind, and I was just hypersensitive maybe to the,
You're inappropriate a lot of times too.
The what?
No,
Did you identify with it?
There's that whole #MeToo thing, and I think that what maybe you're talking about is people are a little more hypersensitive in certain situations now, whereas before maybe that would have been just is that what you're trying to say?
Well, the story I want to, it was different. He was finishing up his, whatever he was doing in the Senate. There's a bunch of people on a field trip that were showing up to talk to him, and a reporter was trying to talk to him, get a couple of his comments of the session that they just had, whatever he was doing, whatever committee he was in. And he said something to the effect of, I can't talk right now, but I will be able to after. You should stick around these guys would have a lot of fun with you. That was his comment. She took it in a very offensive way. The first comment responding to that was, well, these are a bunch of, young boys. They all go to an all-boys school. They would be stammering, stuttering over themselves, having, that kind of fun. Like they would be laughing at each other because they don't know how to talk to
But
girls.
he implied gangbang, though, right? I mean, he implied.
Wowzers, taking it to a whole new level.
Right? He said, "Hey, these boys would have fun with you, right?" Okay, so.
I mean, he might have hit.
Did he look like that when he said it? How he looked?
I mean, we weren't there, David.
We can only get it, the picture in our heads, and I think he's
Listen, guys, speech is 35% of communication. At most. So it's about the body language, the tone of voice,
Where his hand was on her body.
No, we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. If his hand is actually grasping her buttocks as he's telling her how beautiful she is, or how much fun these young boys are going to have with her, that's it. I think each person in a leadership position really has to take a step back and look at it and say, what is going to be appropriate for me to say in any one of the situations they're in.
Appropriate in 2020. 2020 appropriate. It's not the same as 2016 appropriate, which is not the same.
You're right. Which means that as a leader, you need to learn how to adapt.
Yeah.
And that's the only change.
And not be a creep. It's not that hard.
Yeah, don't keep your hands to yourself and quit snipping people's hair.
I feel like Joe Biden's touching me from behind right now. I don't know what it is.
The moving goalposts, even if it was considered more appropriate to beat your wife in the 50s, that doesn't mean I think it was okay that men beat their wives. Like back then they accepted it more or something.
Yeah, no,
it's okay.
I hope
slavery
I didn't.
was appropriate in the 1880s.
We had the
we gotta get going.
I hope I didn't imply that it's okay to say certain things, but I get
what you're saying.
Okay, but
David.
you totally okay.
David, first of all, make sure your fiance knows that I am not defending the allegation regarding.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, Kayla. He's creeper.
Yeah, if he's doing things, if you know those other things, then the words that came out of his mouth probably were more nefarious, right? You know that he's a grabber and a toucher. I was looking at it from this isolated incident, and no one knew anything else about him as being that kind of personality at the time.
Tell Katie.
I don't know. I've met him. He sort of looks like. Anyway.
Well, I don't know.
Jim knows.
We don't
met
have
him
a great
before.
group of people wanting to be prosecutor. That's the problem with prosecutor positions, I find. Who wants that job? I don't want that job. Sounds like a horrible job. Your job is to throw humans in cages,
A full-time snitch. That's it.
It's a bad job.
Which is a worse job? Which is a worse job, a prosecutor or a judge, David?
Prosecutor's better, I'd say, because you can be like Jessica Cooper and sit in your ivory tower and never do anything really, make up policies. She's not doing any legal research or arguing any cases. What does she do even? She's like an administrator that tells people what to do. She just tells people what to do.
A politician. You could theoretically create good policies, instruct
you could be
policies.
an
For example,
prosecutor and dismiss.
There you go.
I'm not going to prosecute drug cases. I'll only give people deferrals with probation or something. You could do that.
The prosecutor in Ingham County took that position. She was the only prosecutor that supported the recreational. She took the position and told her sheriffs that smell is no longer probable cause. I don't know that everybody else is doing that. She's maybe out on an island, but it's interesting that even though you were downing on the prosecutors, what a terrible job putting people in cages, and I asked you to compare it to a judge, and you still thought that being a prosecutor putting people in cages is better than being a judge. Care to explain yourself?
Because being a judge, you have to read that advice of rights to people how many times per day? Maybe a court of appeals judge would be fun, but a normal daily district circuit court judge that has to deal with the same bullshit over and over again every single day. So repetitive. Yeah, there are interesting parts when you do trials, but like just pleading, how many people they plead guilty, they read the advice of rights, they sentence people to they have to do something too. I mean, there's a lot of judges that keep them out of jail, but like figuring out probation and just reading the same stuff. I don't know. I would go crazy in that job. At least being a prosecutor, you could it's more interesting. It's at least one side of the game.
The point is this, David. You could do more as a judge. You could dismiss every case that came in. You could put nobody on probation. You could not have all the things that every one of these judges does wrong. You could say, I'm not going to do that. But the problem is, like the prosecutor's job, it is a popularity contest, not a contest on who does the right thing and makes the right decisions. It's based on popularity. You are a doing the right thing kind of judge. You might not be popular. You may come off as being the guy that's dismissing the case against the drug dealers, the guy that's letting the, people with whatever issues you're sensitive
to. You could get away with it for one term, probably.
You get away with it if you get elected in and for the one term, and then, but then what?
But I'm just saying, prosecutor, if you're the Oakland County prosecutor or Macomb County prosecutor, you can affect cases on a county level, whereas there's maybe a circuit court judge in one of the smaller counties, but like in these other courts, there's 12 circuit court judges in Macomb County, maybe more. You get a little sliver of people that you can affect, but you can really affect some change as a prosecutor. And just being a judge is boring, I think. It would be boring. Sometimes exciting, usually boring. Prosecutor, you're still involved in criminal law. I don't know. But prosecutors, you could do real change, but nobody wants that position that's going to make real change. My friend in San Francisco, they got a 30-year public defender elected to prosecutor of San Francisco this most recent term. He's just starting. And, we'll see. Obviously, I don't know what it's doing to I guess the poop in the streets problem is bad in San Francisco.
Really?
Yeah, it is certainly not a place to be vacationing at any point, anytime soon, with pandemic or not.
Well, I guess with pandemic, it's less poop on the streets.
Well, because they're shuffling all those homeless people into hotels.
Are they?
Yeah,
yes.
I think good. Yeah.
It's ridiculous what's happening there. They've destroyed it.
While we were talking about how somebody could be a progressive prosecutor change policies, there's a couple realities, and I'm going to agree with Adam L. Brooks, who was on here the other day for a hash bash, and says that prosecutors are worse than judges. And I would agree with that to this extent. The modern day prosecutor often would refer to an article that I would pull out for this particular purpose, which is that they have become the bullies in the courtroom. And they are the bullies in the courtroom because they control everything. They can bring the charges, they decide what the charges are, they can dismiss charges, and they can add charges. And the modern day prosecutor is doing everything in the criminal justice system that it wasn't intended for. They're overcharging people with crimes and then expect them to plead to some other type of charge that that was the only appropriate charge. Our criminal justice system was never, ever intended for this. Never. The idea was they got evidence of a crime and they think they can convict you at trial, then they bring the charges for that particular charge, and the person either goes to trial or they plead guilty if they think they're guilty. They don't plead guilty because it's in their best interest. And they don't plead guilty because they're going to take this amount of time in jail, because the consequences of them, if they're found guilty, is going to be so much more substantive and significant. The idea that I'm pleading guilty, even though I'm not guilty because it's in my best interest, is a reality in the United States criminal justice system, and it accounts for, unfortunately, 95% of the convictions and that conviction rate, which is absurd. But the overcharging of prosecutors, I can't agree more. The modern day prosecutors are working like they're supposed to. And the worst part, David, even if you were trying to be that progressive prosecutor, the police are going to go crazy. We're living in a modern age of the tail wagging the dog. the police run the show more often than not. Do you think? I don't know. I mean, Jessica Cooper arguably did not do what many thought she was going to do in terms of policy making, and certainly with her approach to marijuana, medical marijuana, and all other things like that. Do you think it was because that is her decision, or do you think she was forced into it because of the law enforcement community and sheriff's department that surrounds her? What do you think, David?
I think she was not forced into it. I think that's the human being that she is. I don't think anybody could force a prosecutor to be as tough as she is. Like the way she sets policies and stuff like that, that's from her. I don't think you can blame Bouchard.
You don't think so? You don't think Bouchard is more powerful than her, politically speaking?
I don't. She's never lost an election.
Yeah, but Bouchard definitely has a, I think, stronger public sentiment behind him. Jessica Cooper just isn't visible enough. Everybody knows who Michael Bouchard is.
Yeah, he's been politically engaged for a long time, and they're from different parties. You know what I mean? Those two are from different parties, and I felt, I don't know, did you practice in front of her at all, David?
No. No,
You
she's
weren't
been the prosecutor the whole time I've been a lawyer,
Right.
I think.
I mean, she got elected primarily in Oakland County because of the defense bar, kind of like how the cannabis community did for Dana Nessel. You know what I mean? And obviously, you wouldn't think of her as a pro, defendant orientated kind of prosecutor. You think of her as just the opposite. I mean, I don't know, but she did the opposite of that one-term, judge that we were talking about, or prosecutor that we were talking about, whereas she relied on her, being a good defense judge, even in the Court of Appeals, to get elected as a prosecutor, and then, basically did not make the defense, bar that happy, I would say, and people would, I'm saying, I'm not speaking specifically, I'm speaking generalities and whatnot, but
I'm worried about Karen McDonald beating her in the Democratic primary. I don't think COVID's good for anybody, like new person's ability to get out there and get known and have fundraisers and stuff,
Are you saying you support McDonald in the
I support
primary?
Karen McDonald hardcore. I'm hardcore in for Karen McDonald. I knew her. I met Karen McDonald as she was carrying her yoga stuff through the courthouse, like in yoga clothes. She was going to the other side to teach a yoga class. She took yoga teacher training with Kayla. I used to practice with her. She's she's outside of court, at least. She is a genuinely nice, seemingly good person, based on the interactions I've had with her, outside of the courtroom context. And I think I've talked to her, she's going to be pretty good on criminal justice reform for Oakland County, big time. Compared to Jessica Cooper, I mean, you can't make a compare. She will be so much better than Jessica Cooper. It's incomparable. And she's got a lot of history of not being bad as a judge either, from what I know. And I think a genuinely good person. I don't think she's going to be bad. And I don't know is a Republican running? Do you know, Mike?
I don't know who's running. I don't know. I don't know.
Because it's a Democratic primary that essentially is determining it right now.
Sure.
So, and it will be interesting who shows up to vote in Oakland County in the fall, with Biden as the presumptive nominee.
Right.
I don't feel a lot of love of Biden from anybody. I don't know how it seems like he won.
He might not remember to show up.
Oh, we're going to get 4 more years.
4 more years.
You guys are ready.
That sounded depressed, Jim.
Hold on.
A little bit.
In light of the COVID virus, I came up with this. Can't we just take it back to before we made America great again? Just kidding.
Interestingly, the shit started hitting the fan as soon as Cheeto came in.
Right. Just saying, if you're going to be truly responsible and accountable for the timing and whatnot, it's making America look how great America. Just kidding.
It's incredible. It's never been like this ever before, ever.
It's true.
So
in
great.
the whole history.
All this winning, I can't take it. It's too much. Too much winning. Kidding. It's only
And everybody's fantastic.
There's only 15 cases. It'll be down to 2 in a day or so.
Open by Easter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to remind everybody who didn't renew their driver's license during this COVID emergency that the police are still out there and they might stop you automatically if they see your license is expired and they see the vehicle out there and automatically run it and realize the driver has an expired license. They might just decide to give it a courtesy stop and stop it. And the Supreme Court has said that's okay with that case this week, Kansas versus Glover. So I want to remind everybody, if you haven't renewed your license because of this COVID emergency, better not to drive.
Interestingly, Alan, the police don't have a whole lot to do since everybody's in their home right now, and most of them have said they're not responding to some of the less important calls. So I had to take care of some essential business today on the road, and I noticed that there were a lot of cops out. A lot of police officers with just really nothing to do except for wait for people like you're talking about.
The roads were empty. I was out also.
Yeah, there's been a lot of cops in Royal Oak, but I talked to the Royal Oak cops, and they basically said they're not trying to fuck with anybody. They're not trying, like, they don't want to get COVID.
They don't want to get COVID.
Really trying to, like, most
okay,
write you a ticket.
That's fair.
And most are gonna write you a ticket, but like, they don't want to have to search your car right now.
Right. And they're not gonna.
So this crisis.
I mean, the meme of just like cough your way out of a ticket. By the way, guys.
This is gonna
if you're just coughing when they walk up to your car.
You say do not do that? That's not a good technique?
Open your window and just start coughing all over the place.
Okay.
Do they want to hand you a ticket?
But this crisis will reveal, or is revealing, how ridiculous a lot of aspects of the system are, especially the justice system.
Yeah.
And Michael has said it the way Michael says it. It's okay. Now we got an emergency, so we can shut down. We don't have to worry about these crimes and things right now. So those are on like a timeout until the crisis is over. And then we're back on. And it's okay to go ahead and start just dealing with stupid shit after the crisis is over with.
It definitely makes them put it into the two buckets, doesn't it?
My point being is that, wow, there's a lot of aspects in this system and a lot of the different parts of the system, not just the justice system, but different, that are revealing themselves as maybe obsolete and not needed. And why are we doing certain things? Just doesn't make sense.
No, and another thing doesn't make sense is that in a time like today, or like, our pandemic situation, the president, I've read now 2 articles that were talking about, I'm hoping they were joking, about pardoning the Tiger King, because do you guys know about the Tiger King? Oh, gosh.
Of course.
He got some time, and so the Trump's son-in-law, Cushman, I think he is, said, he was like, "Hey, this guy was given too much time," and Trump in Trump fashion, he's like, "You know what? Maybe I'll take a look at that. And that'll just be my, my golden moment. Pardoning the Tiger King. Jeez, oh Pete. What have we come to?
Oh, sad.
But if you ever get bored, I understand. I haven't watched it myself, but the memes are out of control. They're crazy. They're funny.
Oh,
and they have
Tiger
one of
King, Tiger King.
Oh yeah, Tiger King. All you have to do, go on to Netflix. It'll be the very first thing that pops up. Like I say, I haven't watched it yet. I keep threatening to, but I'm not sure I want to subject myself to like that.
It's
Definitely watch it.
It's the best.
Yeah?
It's the best.
Okay.
The characters are not good people. It's kind of like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And they're almost, if you had a TV show that was fake and had these characters, you would say it's too over the top, maybe. Some people would say that, like, those aren't real people. People are not really like that. And they are like that. And they're fucking crazy. And it is great entertainment.
Well, what else do we have to do during
such
quarantine?
A crazy story. This guy that has thousands of tigers in Oklahoma and wears a gun on his hip and is gay and like turns straight men gay. He has 2 straight men that marry him with a little bit of methamphetamine. I mean,
that is the funniest thing. I saw one that said something about it was like the guy was interviewing the other guy. He's like, so why didn't you make it on the Tiger King? And the guy is like, well, I guess I chickened out going gay. Chickened out going gay and doing meth. Like that. Oh my gosh, what the heck?
I would recommend you guys watch it. It's a worthwhile bit of interesting. I mean, the lady Carol Baskin, all the characters in it. There's one guy that has like both of his legs amputated. He messes with the cats. You think that the cat ate his legs, right? No, it's something different. They throw
really.
At you. There's this one lady. Her arm got ripped off by a tiger. On like Monday, she's back at work on Friday. Tells them to amputate.
They build them tough in Oklahoma.
I mean, yeah, it's a good show. They got good
cornfed.
Wow.
It's kind of like there's once a show called The Wonderful Whites of West Virginia. Those are some crazy characters too. Though it's like that in that vein, but with tigers.
Well, maybe by next week's show, maybe each of us can at least take a little 15-minute snippet and see what we say, what our assessment is.
Give it an episode.
Give it a step.
Episode 3 is where it really starts
rocking.
Yeah.
All right. Good to know.
So we got to go 3 deep, is what you're saying. All right.
Yeah. Go 3 deep at least.
You got to learn the story of Carol Baskin and her husband. It's
Carol.
Episode 3.
Oh man.
Carol Baskin.
Episode 3. Okay.
And that's when the show starts to get really crazy. All
right. All right, guys.
And it's got a little murder mystery.
Oh yeah.
So let's leave it with Michael's quote from earlier. Let's all work on getting America to back before it was great again.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Let's get it back to where it was just okay.
Yeah.
Have a good night, guys.
Bye, everyone.
All right.
All right, so did we cover everything? Final thoughts, Rick Thompson. Where's Jamie, by the way? Is he still on? Rick Thompson. Yeah. Go ahead.
Jamie's still on. As far as final thoughts go, I mean, these are essential lines of communication that our cannabis industry needs. When we have podcasts that meet our weekly targets, folks can tune in, folks can get educated. More importantly, if anything more serious were to develop, people would know where to turn. They would know that we broadcast every week on Thursday, and if there was something really that went down that was heinous, they know they could tune in and get the straight scoop. It's an important service we're providing during a time where a lot of people are disadvantaged. So kudos to all of us who do podcasting, who get out there on a weekly and make these things happen. And kudos to all the listeners who continue to support us.
Well said, Rick. Well said. Where's Jamie? Jamie Lowell? Still there?
He's there.
Yeah, hey.
Okay. We've been quiet, by the way. You
a lot of good action going on. No need to
okay.
fix what ain't broke.
Well, let's hear your thoughts. Alan, you can still go, Alan. Just be patient. Hold on a second. I see you trying to get in there.
There's some interesting economic projections and assessments by Michigan State. I suggest people take a look at that. Maybe we talk about that a little bit more intently next week. But good show, everybody. Thank you very much.
All right, excellent.
It's like you showed up. It's like you came up with that topic, and every single comment you've made on the show was about that report, nothing else. And now at the end of the show, you're like disappointed we didn't talk about it. I'm just kidding. But,
I'm not disappointed I cliffhangered it. I'm disappointed that DJ wasn't able to match up again for tonight, but he's still down, so we'll try to reschedule.
Cool.
I want to talk about the report. I'm interested to hear about it, Jamie. And sorry we weren't able. Did you review it thoroughly? Are you fully in on it?
I read it. There's some cool numbers there. There's such limited data that it's not like it's extremely comprehensive or reliable, but it's really promising, and the numbers are getting bigger and bigger all the time as the revenue gets assessed. And it includes some ancillary projections for how many jobs it will create and how much money can be produced from it. So it's pretty interesting and it's pretty encouraging.
Okay. All right. Good job again for Hash Bash. You did a phenomenal job. Showed your leadership skills really well. Compliment you, and Rick, you of course as well. If you don't have any other final thoughts, Alan wants to talk real bad. I can see there he's got his Rust Rabbi Yarmulke on. Go, Alan.
I just want to give one final warning to the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment took a major hit this week with Kansas versus Glover, and it's really a sad thing. And I'm very sad to give the news to everybody about that. But be careful out there, folks.
Okay. Steve Miller. Steve Miller, very good job tonight. What do you? Any final thoughts or commentary?
No, just again, it's are things worth the start up enforcing again that really don't mean a whole hill of beans about anything. When we're in a time of crisis, people know how to behave themselves. We don't need the police and the courts telling us what to do every 5 seconds.
It's a good point. Very good point.
I mean, things aren't just out of control and rioting in the streets and all that kind of stuff right now. People are being well behaved, staying home for the most part, and doing what they got to do to make this thing end so we can go back to normal. And unfortunately, back to normal for some will be their court date getting rescheduled.
I know.
for something that's completely moronic. And that's all I got.
Okay. Amanda?
I think she dropped off.
Okay, all right, fine. Jimmy, you got any final thoughts?
I would just say that I think the state of Michigan is doing great in the battle against COVID-19. The data supports that people are staying in their homes at a greater rate in the states of Michigan and New York than anywhere else in the country. And I think the numbers support it. So I would say just hope everybody can hang in there for a little bit longer. And over the course of the next week or two, I think we're going to know a lot more, and hopefully things will start looking a lot better here.
All right, I feel comforted by those words, Jim. I hope they're true. And if they're not, I'll be very mad. But
well,
All right, did we cover everybody? Any other final thoughts? I want to give a shout. I see my friend Jeff Frazier listening and watching. We gave you a shout out earlier, Jeff. We miss you from Walton, Texas. Joel Malinsky of the Hemp Corner has not been around. Maybe we'll get him on the broadcast next week. if he's still hurting for attention. But I think that's it. We covered it all. Where'd Deb go? Where's Deborah? Did she leave? She jumped off?
She dropped off, yeah.
All right. Next week, everyone make sure they have their pets. My dragons are over there bobbing their heads. They're pissed off they didn't get on this week. So we'll have to do that next week, all right?
All right. Show and tell with the pets.
All right, be safe, and thank you, David Radoy, for calling, and all the people that are throwing some questions out here and topics to talk about. Appreciate that. And Tommy from the bunker, and Dan somewhere. Appreciate it, guys. Good job, and we'll talk at you all next week. Be safe, everybody.
See ya.
Good night, everybody.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. michiganmedicalmarijuana.org.
I am Earl from G3 Cannabis Therapy Network, and you are tuning into Kicking It with Komorn, where we take a new topic every month based upon what you want to learn about legality and cannabis in Michigan.
It ain't fair, John Sinclair, in the stir for breathing air. It ain't fair, John Sinclair, in the stir for breathing air. Set him free, let him be, breathing air like you and me. What's the judge to do? What else can Judge Columba do? We got to set him free. This whole place went nuts. If he was a soldier man, shooting gooks in Vietnam. If he was CIA, selling dope and making hay, he'd be free, breathing air like you and me. What's the judge do? What else could Judge Columba do? Well, we got to set him free. And sure enough, that was Saturday, and then next Monday, John Sinclair walked out of jail. And the Supreme Court issued an opinion in People versus John Sinclair that said, it's cruel, it's unusual, it's arbitrary, it's irrational, it's capricious, and it cannot be the law in the state of Michigan that we treat marijuana the same way we treat opioids. And they set him free.
These events inspired the creation of Ann Arbor's annual pro-legalization Hash Bash Rally, which and it's going to be held this April in Ann Arbor, and I have been asked to be one of the main speakers at the event. Again,
John Sinclair was and is a poet provocateur, and adamant opponent and protester against America's involvement in the Vietnam War and all the bombings. He was organized together with Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin and the Black Panthers guys. And, he organized against the war. And in his words, we were protesting the war and we were advocating for the legalization of marijuana, all the while smoking vast quantities of it. We ought to do something about finally getting this plant off of the controlled substances list. We have law where the state of Michigan is licensing the medical use of marijuana. At the same time, it says under the Board of Pharmacy says under the Controlled Substances Act that it is still a controlled substance. And not only is it still a controlled substance, it's still a Schedule I controlled substance. And being Schedule I controlled substance means that it is contraband per se, and that its mere presence is evidence of a crime, and it justifies the raids. Michigan State Police spend 40% of their resources going after marijuana that is allowed for medical use, is licensed by the state, is now been voted into law by the people of this state to be legal for adult use. And yet it's still 40% of the police budget, still 40% of the prosecutor's daily load, it's still 40% of the Michigan State Police Crime Lab daily load. And it's still Schedule I, which justifies the stops, the searches, the seizures, and more importantly, the raids. And that means men with AR-15s and ski masks going in where men, women, and children and dogs and grandparents, are quietly sitting there watching TV. And because the neighbor complained of the smell of marijuana coming from a basement window, these patients or caregivers and now any citizen in the state is allowed to grow. The continued placement of marijuana on the Michigan State list of controlled substances is just simply absurd.
This lawsuit arose from, it has a lot of history. And a few months ago, we were talking about how absurd it is that Michigan both has marijuana as a Schedule I controlled substance, which theoretically has no medical use, and also we're licensing facilities to sell marijuana as medicine. And we all believe that those two cannot stand together, that they are incompatible. And so here we are today.
It's got a medical legal identity with huge bureaucracies of the state supervising and charging a minimum of $66,000 for you to open a dispensary to sell this weed that last year you could have been arrested and sent to prison for by the same people. This whole thing is just totally horseshit, if I could use that.
That's a technical term.
It's hard to even fathom. And for 80 years they've been locking people up and taking their possessions and harassing and terrorizing us as citizens because we like to smoke weed. So I'm proud to be part of this effort. I want to be part of every effort to completely remove the police from our lives as regarding to marijuana.
All right.
They got nothing at all to do with marijuana.
Well, in 2018, when the administrative rules were supposed to be implemented to provide a mechanism for people applying to get licenses, the state at the same time acknowledged the principle that Michigan, to avoid a state of emergency so patients couldn't get their marijuana, needed to formulate emergency rules. So, first of all, when the legislature passed this law, they acknowledged that the state would be in an emergency if people didn't get marijuana. That is not how you talk about a controlled substance. Secondly, the way that they dealt with it was that they allowed caregivers, who they vilified for the last however many years, to supply these places where patients would get cannabis. This is not a controlled substance. This is not how controlled substances are provided for patients. And as the year went on, they tried to move to their regulated system that's been created, which wasn't working. They had more caregivers, extended the rules, and identified the names of caregivers this last go around that this method of people growing in their basement are going to provide, or wherever are going to provide to be the source for patients. And that's the state of affairs right now in Michigan. This is not a controlled substance.
Hi, I'm Steve Miller. I'm a retired sergeant with the Canton Police Department. Had just under 25 years of police work. On behalf of John Sinclair, our law firm, Komorn Law, along with Matt Abel and his law firm at Cannabis Council are suing the state of Michigan Pharmacy Board to have marijuana removed off the controlled substances schedule. So today I'm here to tell a story. We're going to call it the 7 degrees of separation between Steve Miller and John Sinclair, and linked through one fairly famous politician, Mr. Perry Bullard. 20 plus years ago, when I was a young detective, I investigated a case in which Mr. Bullard suffered a tragic death. He was a great politician to have. I had to investigate that death. Mr. Bullard wrote a Supreme Court opinion that got Mr. John Sinclair out of prison for the 2 joints at that time. Also during this time, when I was a young detective and investigating Mr. Bullard's death, I had the opportunity of meeting one Michael Komorn. We had a case in common, and over the course of that case, he was the defense attorney. We actually did what most think is impossible, and he and I became good friends over the course of that case, and I developed a lot of respect for him at that time. Michael Komorn in and around that same time bringing me to the future where Mr. Sinclair and Mr. Bullard are connected through a Supreme Court opinion written by Mr. Bullard and setting Mr. Sinclair free. Fast forward to now, we have a pretty significant lawsuit against the state of Michigan Pharmacy Board right now. This would be a major thing. If we prevail in this lawsuit and marijuana is removed off the controlled substances schedule, then that will be a major, major thing, and I will feel like I've been a major part of history. Michael Komorn, and through his law firm, has really made significant impacts against the war on drugs, especially as it relates to marijuana, and fighting for what's right in this case and for medical marijuana patients and caregivers all over the state. He is a pioneer in the legal world in marijuana law, and he needs to be commended for all the good work he's done in this area to try and get things right.
Hopefully we'll get our hearing. If not, then we'll fight it out in the Court of Appeals and ultimately back to the Supreme Court that originally spoke in the case of John Sinclair back in 1971. It's time for, this absurdity that has forever lived at the heart of the drug war to be done with. And the way to do that is to take marijuana off the controlled substances list altogether. It's no longer to be policed. It's to be regulated.
Komorn Law. Michael Komorn is one of the top attorneys in Michigan that has experience and dedication in criminal defense law to provide clients with results. Komorn Law, the best damn criminal defense lawyers, period.
And now I'm back on it. What's this? In the face of injustice, we stand proud and tall. Police misconduct drives us up the wall. We come in all shapes and sizes, fighting to be free. Jack-booted thuggery serves to charge our battery. We are the dildos for justice, and we are here for you. When you just don't have the juice to do what you must do, and when the police come calling cause you smoked a little grass, grab a dildo for justice and shove us up their ass. We do all the hard work at attention all the time. We may be rigid, but our justice is sublime. We vibrate with intensity, electric in our cause. When the cops don't have a warrant and they violate our laws, we are the dildos for justice, and we are here for you. When you just don't have the juice to do what you must do, and when the police come calling cause you smoked a little grass, grab a dildo for justice and shove us up their ass.
Nice.
Hi, I'm attorney Michael Komorn of Komorn Law PLC, and you are watching Planet Green Trees.
Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.